So let's just jump right into this. I mean, great article comes out from the city by Yoav. And Yoav, really, shout out to Yoav. He does a great job with journalism. His investigations are pretty much on point, and he does a great job of putting.
You like him now?
I never disliked him. Listen, he's got a job to report. I don't take it personal. Actually, I appreciate his articles now because at this point, he's delved in and exposed the hypocrisy in my case. So being coined as the most complained cop of the NYPD, I was told, now, I hope that you listen to this, Lou Turco, the LBA president. I was told by Lou Turco, there's nothing we can do. Absolutely nothing. You're not promotable. I could not get promoted to captain because of my substantiated civilian complaints. And I remember back then, and I hope you listen to this, Lou, because I remember I asked you this question. I said, this will come up one day. I sure did. Has anyone ever been promoted with a case similar to mine or even more egregious than my case? Because we all agreed that my case was a political hit job and that it was an overzealous civilian complaint review board that targeted my record. Quite interesting. The COVID emergency extension and also the statute of limitations when it comes to the actual civilian charges for civilian complaints were extended in my case, and I was charged with crimes, and the COVID emergency exception was utilized to extend the civilian complaints against myself. So most of the complaints I had by the time that they were substantiated were 4 to 5 years old. And again, Lou, you told me nothing could be done, but yet Kaz Daughtry was promoted 6 ranks with civilian complaints. What do you think, John?
I think it's a big club, Eric, and you ain't in it, brother. Now, if you would have donated to Eric Adams, if you would have showed up at your local Democratic events in the Bronx, you would have stayed, you would have buttoned up with Carl Hasty, you would have hung out with Donovan Richards, you would have been, completely flipped your political ideology and pretended that you believed in open borders, decarceral criminal justice system where we don't prosecute anyone. You're going to want to open the jails. If you would have did all that, you might be the deputy commissioner of operations, my friend. But that's the problem here is like there is no standard whatsoever. Zero standard whatsoever. There is not there is zero process in place. There is zero reason why you weren't promoted to captain because people similarly situated to you right after you were forced into a retirement because you couldn't make captain because you were unpromotable. Similarly situated lieutenant, which almost just as many allegations as you. I don't believe he had as many substantiations as you, but I think he had more allegations than you. One of those two, whatever it was. I could have the numbers flipped. Whatever it was, he was promoted to captain. So, there is zero normalcy. There's zero pattern. Everything is just on a moment's notice. Nothing makes sense. Yet the police unions sit there and pretend like there's some procedure in place when it comes to promotions, when it comes to discretionary promotions. But I think more importantly, and I don't think this gets brought up enough, and you called me last night and you brought it up, and you said, what holds more weight? A civil service test or me being friends with the mayor? And obviously, a civil service test should, in anyone's eyes, should hold a lot more weight, right? You actually earned a promotion. You weren't given one because, I don't know, you were the mayor's little butt boy and followed him around, drove him around during a mayoral election while you were on duty for the NYPD, like it's rumored that Kaz has done. So, I mean, I don't know, Eric. Like, I think you have a major lawsuit, and I think that, it's time for some New York City attorneys to step up, and it's time for the unions to just either start calling it out or step aside and just say, we're here for absolutely no reason. We just like our free cell phones, our free cars, and going out for lunch every day and just picking up the phone and saying, yeah, Mo, nothing you could do, bro. I'm promotable, kid.
Exactly. That's the hypocrisy that I'm exposing here. For a long time, I was in contact with the union. And I was told by Lou Turco that he would actually coordinate and speak to Ed Caban. Back then, he was the first deputy commissioner. And yet I was told nothing could be done. But I was told nothing could be done, and yet Kaz Daughtry was promoted 6 ranks through a discretionary promotion. In my case, for anyone that's watched this, if you're not NYPD, I took an actual civil service exam as a lieutenant, and I was on the list to be promoted to captain, and I was told I could not be promoted to captain because of my substantiated civilian complaints. And here we look at Kaz Daughtry, who is a detective, who's never passed a civil service exam, and he was bumped up 6 different levels of promotion through discretionary. What does discretionary mean? That means that the police commissioner authorized his promotion without a civil service exam and accelerated through the ranks. Now, I would think if we actually say that you need an actual clean jacket, what I mean by jacket, a record, that would actually hold more weight through a discretionary process, that you would actually have to have even far more of a clean slate than taking a civil service exam, but apparently not. And again, it goes back to what we've been saying. Nepotism is far more egregious than anything that's going on with the police department, even far more than DEI. It's all about nepotism, and it circles everything around nepotism. If you're in the club, if you're in the right circle, look, I just saw, again, Hispanic Society is the right circle right now. I just saw Raul Pintos, former chief of the police department, another Man of the Year award for some type of organization. He has huge ties to the Hispanic Society. Again, this whole thing falls around nepotism. We have these different cliques within the police department. And sure enough, what I realized, I was just general population. And the problem is because I was a straight white alpha male. That's the problem.
I think we're selling Kaz Daughtry short here, though. You just said something that popped in my head. First off, I just want to say, Eric, you are not ranked as high in Call of Duty. I don't even know if you're ranked on the PlayStation charts as far as being a Call of Duty player. So, I mean, there was a major qualification that we're missing to why he should be running the New York City Police Department as the second de facto police commissioner, because Ed Caban is clearly not the police commissioner, but he's getting his friends promoted while he's in the seat. Good for you, Ed. Whatever. But I think we're selling him short, because I think it's in this article, and we're going to get into this article in a second. But in the article, it says that he was promoted 6 times, and it makes sense. He was promoted 6 times, but when you really think about it, he was promoted to detective. He was promoted to detective 2nd grade. He was promoted to detective 3rd grade. He was promoted past sergeant, past lieutenant, past captain, past DI, past inspector, past 1-star, past 2-star, to 3-star. So he's actually promoted 11 ranks. 11 times he didn't go the route that everyone else in the NYPD had to do to attain the rank, or the assimilated rank, of a 3-star chief, which he currently holds as deputy commissioner. So we had played a video on this podcast yesterday. We'll probably play it again at some point in this show. But the video showed Kaz Daughtry when he was a 1st grade detective at a protest that turned into a riot. Gentleman runs away from him. It appears from everything that comes out that as the gentleman's running, he smashes his head into the pole, runs. Kaz Daughtry catches up to him, takes him, slams him to the floor. Next thing we know, the guy's head or the girl's head, whatever, I don't know. It's New York. It's confusing to me. I'm just going to keep saying guy because that's what I see. Stands up. His head's bleeding. It's all over the place. What's interesting about that whole interaction to me is, let's just back up. The video that comes out after an article comes out saying that Kaz Daughtry is going to be sued over this, right? He's being sued because of this takedown, because he took the person down, being sued about this arrest. But then Viral News puts out a 10-second clip. The Daily News in that paper has screenshots, and it appears to be Kaz Daughtry's left hand, Kaz Daughtry's right hand. What is that? It's the body camera, people. 10 seconds that is favorable to the New York City Police Department was leaked out by John Schell and Kaz Daughtry. That's the first thing before we get into anything. Chris, I'm not going to forget about the knee on the back. You're 100% right. That is something that we will get into. We are going to break this thing down further, but we want to just give everybody the basis of what happened and then get into the article. So that's all I got. All right, what do you got?
Sure enough, we're going to delve into the article, but I just want some key points to sit in your mind while we start to read this article. So several days ago, John and I did a podcast, live podcast. Some of the comments I see, some of you guys, you were there and you heard, and we spoke about the actual promotion of Kaz Daughtry, and it's come to realization. John and I see at this point, it's just Kaz Daughtry is operating too much in a uniformed type of capacity, where he's out there taking enforcement. His gun is exposed to the public, and we posed the question numerous times. John has, myself, and of course Sal Greco. We've all posed the question: as a civilian member of the service, as the deputy commissioner of operations, what laws is he violating? What liability is the city going to be upheld to, the taxpayer, if there's lawsuits that emanate from uniformed police work and enforcement action that Kaz Daughtry is taking? Because that Kaz Daughtry, to our knowledge, at least what the public has been provided, is that Kaz Daughtry was a uniformed member of service as a detective, but he's been promoted into a civilian position. And we've never seen a civilian member of the service, especially as a deputy commissioner of operations, who outranks most chiefs on the job, to be in a position where they're in the limelight and they're taking enforcement action on a constant basis. He takes part in these protests, he takes part in these riots, and his gun is always exposed to the public. So Yoav writes a story, and he does quote John based on the podcast. And this we're going to get into. But the reality is this: maybe Kaz Daughtry is actually still a detective who was never actually promoted to a civilian rank on paper, but he's been promoted by Mayor Eric Adams as acting deputy commissioner of operations, and that would explain why he's out there in uniform taking enforcement action. That opens up Pandora's box for other questions, but that is something that we need to look at. And listen, Eddie Nunez, a couple of these guys in the comments, good morning. We appreciate you being with us live. Let's jump right into this article. Chris Arnold, thank you for your comments, brother.
Yeah, sorry, my phone's blowing up right now. All right, so this article comes out from the city, and like Eric said, it is funny, Chris. You're 100% right. He said, "Isn't it strange that just hours after the Daily News breaks the story, the lawsuit, Kaz runs and posts a feel-good story with Rocco? What a coincidence. Nervous much?" For those of you that don't know, Rocco Parascandola actually went up to One Police Plaza yesterday, and it appears they hashed it out at One Police Plaza. And I think that Kaz and Tariq and John Schell explained to him the tenets of journalism, which was which they wrote in the letter that hashtag signed. So so I mean, I don't know what happened. I'm not gonna think, but listen. I mean, it's disgusting that it even had to get to that level, but I don't fault Kaz Daughtry for now reaching out the olive branch or Rocco. Clear the air. This is what men do. This is what men should do. I'm not going to fault them for it, but yeah, you're 100% right, Chris. I personally don't think that Kaz Daughtry went on his own. I think he was told, I mean, by all rumors, we continuously hearing, John, this is going to make you very mad if you're listening or if you tune in later. It's going to make you very mad. But by all rumors, we're hearing that 233 Broadway will have a certain police commissioner head down there in the fall. And we're hearing that your boss, Kaz Daughtry, your driver, is going to be the police commissioner. That's what we're hearing. That's the rumor. I didn't make it up. I'm not spreading rumors. I don't care. I don't need to spread rumors. You guys are fine just the way you are. You give us plenty of content to talk about every day. I don't need to make any moves in the police department. I'm not the mayor. Eric Adams, the swagger man's in charge of New York City. And, the memes are making themselves as the content's coming in hot and heavy. So we don't need to make any changes in the New York City Police Department. We're not starting any rumors. But when we keep hearing something consistently, there's legs to it. And there's a lot of things we said on this podcast, and it all came true. Right?
John, you're 100% right. And here's the problem also. This administration has a terrible PR campaign. They clearly don't understand calculated decisions, calculate expression to the public. Because Kaz Daughtry doubled down when he was asked for an apology by the Daily News Union, and that hashtag signed letter that came out from the NYPD, which we know is most likely Kaz Daughtry himself. Well, not himself, because someone wrote it for him. But that letter was a threatening, alarming, smear-campaign response. And again, if that's your response, you should stand by it, which I don't agree with. It was completely unprofessional. It was threatening. It was alarming. But it just shows that they're acting from a childlike place, immature, completely inadequate, inept. They don't have the leadership ability, and they don't have the patience and the virtue to sit back and think about these things and think about the big picture and wait before they actually make a response. But they're like little kids. They got to jump right on the computer and write it right away because they're full of anxiety, because they don't understand calculated responses, and they don't understand leadership, and they don't understand sometimes patience is a virtue. And then immediately after that, what do we have? Just as we always have with this administration. Hey, Ron Lacey, good morning. And James L. Franklin's right. So cute. They kissed and made up. Immediately, we have a staged photo op. That was completely staged. I don't know if it was staged by Kaz or the mayor, Eric Adams, or John Shell, that they would have a photo op with Rocco Parascondola and Kaz Daughtry, because they never had a photo op before. And you and I spoke offline last night, and I posed this question to you. I said, do you think that Rocco Parascondola pretty much put his tail between his legs? Or do you think, on behalf of the union, they're playing possum and this isn't over? Because sure enough, this is a staged photo op. It's not an apology. And I think if Rocco Parascondola was to lay down, this really leaves other journalists and other media vulnerable to attacks again by Kaz Daughtry and the rest of the upper echelon of the NYPD.
I have solid proof that the media, whether Rocco, I don't think Rocco is going to hold a personal grudge. I think he's going to think that Kaz is insane and all that stuff. And I think, he clearly won the battle, right? I think it was the police department that put their tail between their legs, really, after they sent that scathing article. And I think you're going to continue to see an onslaught of articles, both about New York City Mayor Eric Adams and Kaz Daughtry. And this is one of those articles that came out after this. So, and I think it's important. So is NYPD Deputy Commissioner Kaz Daughtry a uniform member of service, or is he a civilian service? Does it matter? We're going to get into that now. Let's get into that article. I think this is a great article. I read it last night, and I'm like, wow, this really tells everything. So for those of you that have a question about whether or not he's a uniform or a civilian, we're going to answer that in this article. We didn't answer it. I think the author of this article, Yoav Gonen from the city, I'm pretty confident based upon what he wrote. I know the answer. Let's get into the article. So Police Review Board dropped 3 complaints against a veteran detective after unusual promotion to top brass. The board determined it had no jurisdiction to prosecute Kaz Daughtry last year because his new position was a civilian one. But he still wears a gun despite being outside of the uniformed ranks. So, Eric, before we get into the article further, that's a solid point right there. Does it matter that he is a civilian member of the service and wears a gun? And if so, why?
Absolutely. Which is why this podcast is so despised by this administration. This administration and other administrations, of course, but particularly this administration has gaslit the public and bamboozled the public. But now they can't bamboozle the public anymore. They're held accountable by this podcast because our perspective is a different perspective. We're not just saying hug cops, thank the blue, get behind the blue. We're actually giving legitimate perspective. And of course, this matters. It makes a huge difference and different implications for taxpayers and different liabilities, different responsibilities and accountabilities. First of all, as a civilian member of the service, if he is in fact a civilian member of the service, he should not wear his firearm as an open carry. That should be concealed carry. You and I talk about it all the time. We have retired members of the service that get arrested for having their firearms exposed in gun-free zone locations in New York City, in the communist New York City that we have. And the other question is, Does he have arrest powers? As a civilian member of the service, does he have peace officer status? And peace officer status, does he have the capability to make arrest on site? And these are questions, because if there is a lawsuit that emanates while Kaz Daughtry is involved in some type of enforcement action, does he have those arrest powers? What's the liability for the taxpayer in New York City? And in addition to that, and Ron Layson brought this up the other day, it was a fantastic comment. If he, in fact, is truly a civilian, that if someone does make a complaint against him, an adversary, a perpetrator, a person of interest, or it's just a bystander interacting with Kaz Daughtry, the Civilian Complaint Review Board would not take that case. That would be done internally by the Internal Affairs, which would coddle, of course, part of nepotism, Kaz Daughtry.
So listen, I'm gonna put out a point there that how Kyle Seraphin was right when he said to me, John, you didn't live in America, you lived in New York City. I understand where you're coming from, but you have to think of it from an American's point of view. And so I have to sit there and I have to look at the overall of this, how insane it is that we're even having a conversation that a top official from New York City in the New York City Police Department shouldn't open carry, and why. I mean, it shows what a communist rule New York City's been under for years and years and years. And it shows the mindset of all of us. Because even I'm sitting there saying, I'm pointing it out, you're pointing it out, Sal's pointing. How's he open carrying? How's he open carrying? But he works for the police department, right? And it's like, why? And anyone in Texas listening to this conversation or in a free state is like, what the hell are these guys talking about? But I just want to put it into perspective for you. We had a city councilwoman whose shirt lifted up during an Israeli protest, and she had her concealed carry permit, because that's the only thing you're allowed to have if you're not a uniformed member of service in New York State. You're only allowed to conceal carry, and she was arrested because her shirt lifted up. I believe she was charged with menacing, and then I believe she was charged with bringing the gun to a menacing for opening for you being able to see her firearm, and then I think she was charged with some crazy anti-constitutional law where she's not allowed to bring it to a sensitive location, and New York State tries to determine what a sensitive location is. And we told you all those prior: bus stops, train stations, trains, buses, basically anywhere in New York City. Maybe even at the water fountain. Maybe if you go to the water fountain, take a sip of water, you're guilty of being at a sensitive location if you're concealed carrying. So they hit her with that charge. We've had retired members of the NYPD arrested, prosecuted, and actually went through, and the judge found them guilty of menacing because their shirt lifted up and they had a concealed carry permit. So if we're going to talk about standards and we're going to say that laws matter and we're a nation of laws and not of men, then by all means, Kaz Daughtry is breaking that law. Giving you the deputy commissioner title doesn't allow you to break the law, doesn't allow a seated someone who was voted in by the people in New York City, councilwoman, doesn't give her the ability to break the law. It damn sure doesn't give you the ability to break the law. So absolutely, I think open carrying matters in that aspect. When you want to bring down a set of guidelines and you're the person that took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of New York State. Now, although Kathy Holtz's law is absolutely ridiculous, he's out there getting his guys to lock people up left and right daily for violating that same statute that he himself is guilty of. So that's why I think that matters so much. Do I think it's absolutely ridiculous we're having this conversation? I absolutely 100% do. And for all yous in New York City, I know you're thinking like I'm thinking. We've been so indoctrinated that it's not even funny to think that we're not allowed to take our God-given ability to protect and defend our families when we're law-abiding, upstanding citizens who've done nothing wrong. And although Kaz Daughtry is an individual of low integrity, he still, for whatever reason, has maintained his stature in society. He hasn't been deemed a criminal yet. I mean, he's been deemed a liar twice in a trial and in interviews, and he pleaded guilty to that. But he hasn't been deemed a criminal.
Matt, I'm reading these comments. There's great engagement going on here. Some of these people are posing some great questions. We're going to get into the article, But according to Ron Layson here, it says that in the article at some point you're going to see that it says that Kaz Daughtry is covered by the city charter. That may be so, but we're talking about hypocrisy here right now, right? I think that's what's important here. And listen, I've said it before, and I think Corn Pop, he jokes with me.
Ron's going to the ending of the movie. We're going to get to that, Ron.
Yeah. Well, what is that, a spoiler? But what I'm saying here is I've said it numerous times. Now, I don't think it should be against the law. I'm pro concealed carry. That what I'm saying is that as a gun owner carrying a firearm, I prefer to carry it concealed. I think that's the best tactically sound way to carry it. I think it protects you, protects other people. You have that firearm. And if it does leave it exposed, everyone else knows you're the one with the firearm. If something goes down, they know who to avoid or who to attack first. But do I think it should be against the law? Absolutely not. I believe that is a personal choice. I mean, I just think for me personally, and I recommend if you're carrying a firearm, I do believe it should be a concealed matter. But I don't think it should be against the law. You are a Second Amendment carrying gun owner in this country. If you want to make that choice, fine. That was absolutely the most egregious, ridiculous arrest of that councilwoman. It was Ina Vernikov when her firearm was exposed. That's just absolutely ridiculous. So we have to talk about hypocrisy. And the NYPD should uphold the same laws that they have to administer to the public. So Kaz Daughtry, exactly what we've been saying. I think that ultimately, if I had to put my money on it, I believe that he's still a detective. I believe that he's still a uniformed member of service. I believe he never went to the pension section and retired. I believe that he's only in this position so that he has the rank and power, and eventually they'll just put him right into the seat of police commissioner and say that he was actually, he's had experience out there. He's been open to the public. That's where I see this headed. Someone actually put a comment here that the reason why he's protected, say to protect him, basically that's why they put him in this position as a civilian commissioner, and that may be so. But I think that he's in that position so that he has the assimilated power of chief of department, because ultimately he is the police commissioner, or at some point he was acting as the chief of department on behalf of Chief Jeffrey Madrick. But I think the reason why, I mean, they know that he's never going to pass a test. So this was the path to promote their boy who's taken over the police department.
Well, that was it. I mean, he couldn't pass the test. I mean, right? You were given all day at work to study, and you still couldn't do it. I mean, and guys like me and you are studying at home, right? After work at 14, 15 hours. And, is it impossible to pass a supervisor test in the NYPD? Absolutely not. You just got to put in the work. So life after the job, since Eric and Ron wanted to get, before we get through the article, wanted to give the whole point of the article at first, which comes down to the point that I'm going to give a big shout out to Life After the Job first for having his photo as one of the finest Unfiltered memes. Great job, Life After the Job. And what he says is, you never see a police commissioner with the firearm exposed. Why does he expose his firearm? Ron just said it. Eric just said it. You know why? Because he's not a civilian. Ed Caban is a civilian. The police commissioners are civilian. Kaz Daughtry is not a civilian. Ron gave the spoiler alert, and here it is. We'll still go through the article, but here it is. Here's what the point in the article that it makes. This is from the city charter. In the temporary role, which Kaz Daughtry appears to have been placed in, the New York City Police Department still has not commented back on this article, but in the temporary role, that person would exercise all the powers and the duties and receive the salary of their new position while retaining all the rights and privileges and statuses of their private one. So basically, Kaz Daughtry is a uniformed member of service acting in a temporary role as the Deputy Commissioner of Operations while being paid as the Deputy Commissioner of Operations, but in a uniform pension. I mean, that is the best job there is. And like I said on this podcast before, and this proves that I'm right, he will have the largest pension any police officer has ever had with this, doing the same amount of time he has. He is going to be number one. It's not even close. I'm not saying that he'll have the largest one. I'm saying for the amount of years that he put into service and never passing a promotional exam, he's going to bypass everyone that's passed promotional exam in the same time frame as him. It's corruption at its purest form. It's nepotism at its purest form.
I'm pretty confident after this podcast that we're going to get some comments and some blowback in comparison to Bernie Kerik. But I think this is completely different than the case of Bernie Kerik. Bernie Kerik was a detective, yes, but he also did have experience as the commissioner of Department of Corrections. But ultimately, he was actually promoted to the police commission of the New York City Police Department, which is completely different than the avenue we see that the police department under New York City Mayor Eric Adams took in the path of Kaz Daughtry. And I think we absolutely exposed it here. Kaz Daughtry is a uniformed member of the service. He's a detective. Now, there's a difference between rank and billet. His rank is is detective, but his billet is deputy commissioner of operations. His actual billet is police commissioner. No one will actually publicly say it, but he is the police commissioner. If anything, I actually believe he's wearing several hats. He's the police commissioner. He's in charge of the police department. He's the first deputy commissioner. What he says goes when it comes to discipline or anything that's on the job. And I do believe he's also the chief of department. He's out there in an enforcement role. So I believe he's wearing several hats. Ultimately, he is de facto leadership of the NYPD. He is in charge. John Shell knows it. Michael Kemper knows it. And that's why they suck up to him. Because these token pale faces, they only care about their self-serving careers. They're total cucks. They're willing to put aside their own moral compass to allow Kaz Daughtry to treat them like a little butt boy because it's beneficial to their career. I mean, I saw Bruce Separano, an inspector for the New York City Police Department, who I went to the academy with. Kaz Daughtry was clapping at him like he was some type of dog. And he never at some point intercepted that. He just allowed it. It's shameful what some of these men will do to have their self-serving careers, to have better status within the police department, how they give up their own masculinity to be in these positions. Is money really everything? Is it really that important that you get the position you want or the rank, a particular rank that you allow someone to treat you like a dog to get to this point? I mean, John Shell, he's a complete drunken idiot. We know that. But he has far more experience than Kaz Daughtry, and yet he allows Kaz Daughtry, to boss him around like he's a little boy. It's embarrassing. It truly is embarrassing that we actually have a police department that has so much infection with nepotism. It's gotten to this point. And if it wasn't for this podcast, the public would be completely bamboozled, and this would never be the topic of discussion.
I mean, and I'm gonna point one thing out, and I don't want anyone to lose sight of this fact. So, based upon the city charter, based upon what we believe, because we're left to have to make a hypothesis about what Kaz Daughtry is, because the NYPD is the furthest thing but from transparent, because they won't answer a simple question: is Kaz Daughtry a uniformed member of service or is he a civilian? Right? But let's just go back to the title of this article real quick. Let's go back to this, because we're saying that he's a uniform member. But now we're saying that, he's a uniform member, so why isn't he being investigated by the CCRB? Because the police review board dropped 3 complaints against veteran detective after unusual promotion to top brass. Let's get into this article a little bit, because I think it's going to make sense. Its city civilian review board dropped 3 complaints of misconduct against a high-profile detective last year after he was promoted 6 ranks, I believe it was 11, to commissioner, a rare elevation to a civilian position that's generally deemed to be outside the agency's jurisdiction. The complaints against Kaz Daughtry, who was since promoted a second time, because he was so good, to deputy commissioner of operations, were sidelined by the police review board last summer. The New York City Police Department removed Daughtry's name from member of service roster that indicates to the board which department employees it can investigate, according to CCRB officials. Very convenient, gentlemen, very. Despite that, Daughtry has been photographed directly engaging in police enforcement actions over the past year while openly wearing a holstered gun on his right hip. Only non-civilian members of service are allowed to carry an exposed gun, several former NYPD officials said. One of the three cases closed by Daughtry was the subject of a lawsuit filed last week in Manhattan's Supreme Court by Kashim McKnight, who claims that Daughtry assaulted her at a vigil on May 8, 2023 by grabbing her arm and shoulder and slamming her to the ground. Videos of the arrest, which took place on Manhattan's Lower East Side after the vigilante killing of Subway entertainer Jordan Neely, I'm going to say the death of Jordan Neely, show McKnight running away from the crowd of offenders and protesters while Daughtry, who at the time was a detective in plainclothes, suddenly rushed to pursue her on foot. The videos show McKnight running into a street pole, after which Daughtry grabs her from behind and throws her forcefully on the pavement. Daughtry didn't respond Thursday when asked about the lawsuit outside of a mayoral press conference. He's a longtime protege of NYPD Chief of Department Jeffrey Maddrey, and according to news reports, has been granted a direct line to Mayor Eric Adams, who is also a close with Maddrey. Daughtry's leap in rank is highly unusual in the recent history of the NYPD, and even more because he had 51 allegations of misconduct filed against him with CCRB during his 18-year career, although 4 were substantiated. He's among 4 top policing officials in the Adams administration who have generated controversy. Deputy Mayor Phil Banks was an unindicted co-conspirator in the federal case concerning police bribery under the prior administration. Senior mayoral advisor Timothy Pearson is the subject of 4 lawsuits claiming he sexually harassed a subordinate and retaliated against her and her colleagues who backed her. And in a case awaiting Caban's decision, the CCRB last year brought disciplinary charges against Maddrey for voiding the arrest of an ex-cop who allegedly menacing 3 kids with a gun. One point of note when it comes to Timothy Pearson, New York City taxpayers, your foot in the bill, over $50,000 in legal representation because he was trying to get on-duty booty.
Crow Eater, it really is incredible how some of these 30-plus year chiefs cower to Kaz. It's utterly ridiculous. If any of them had any self-respect, they'd leave. That's what John and I have been saying for quite some time here. 2 years in this podcast, we've said that. Where is that old white male that's been pushed out by the police department because of DEI and especially nepotism to stand up and say, this is absolutely ridiculous, that they promoted to police commissioner. Right now, it's a show that's deputy commissioner operations. You know, an immature child that has 0 leadership experience that clearly has taken the police department on a dangerous path and is more concerned with stage photo ops and egos over everything than actually understanding public safety and actually coordinate with the public in a manner that we need. We need real leadership. But no one, I've been asking for that one person to stand up, and we haven't had one. I mean, some cops were actually foolish to believe that it would be Joe Fox. Oh, he's such a nice guy. He's going to do a great job in the Civilian Complaint Review Board. How do you think Joe, right, exactly. Hey, Joe, how do you think Joe voted on the panel for Chief Maddrey's complaint of abuse of authority? How do you think Joe Fox is going to vote when it comes to Kaz Daughtry and Kaz Daughtry's complaints, if these complaints actually ever arise and actually meet an administrative trial, if in fact he is the uniformed member of the service detective that we believe he is? How will these play out by these so-called nice guys? Nothing. That one of them stands up because it goes back to what I've been saying, because they have to pave the pathway for their sons, their daughters, their wives, and for themselves. I mean, look, we see it with Tariq Shepard. Tariq Shepard, who's not a white male, but he's moved up through the ranks, and sure enough, his wife was given some type of gig. I don't know if she deserves it or not, but it just shows you the correlation that the high upper echelon of the police department paves the way for family members, and that's why there's benefit to gain, and that's why these old white males do not speak out, because they owe someone a favor, because at some point their son was taken care of, their wife was taken care of. Eli, good morning, brother. Thank you so much. He said, I'm right about this. They're all empty suits. He's absolutely right. They are empty suits. John, you say it all the time. They're just the ones that stood around the bar long enough. None of these chiefs are super impressive that you'd say, wow, this is a guy that really could lead any organization. Because in a leadership position, you don't really have to know the entire nomenclature and actually the technicality of that job. But you do know how to you need to know how to utilize your resources. That's what a leader does. And clearly, we lack leadership in this police department, especially with Kaz Daughtry, who is, in fact, and I will say this, the police commissioner.
All right. So listen, we're 45 minutes in. We're just getting warmed up. I'm have a feeling this is going to be a long podcast. I'm going to have to get another cup of coffee in a day. And at this time, we got one of the 3 the Magnificent Three right here, who is also hated by the New York City Police Department, want to come on and join us today. And I'm bringing up to the stage the Sal Greco. Sal, what's up, my brother? Well, I know there's a lot of craziness going on. We're talking about the greatest show on earth, and the Get Stuff Done team has made it really the most funny show on earth as well.
Sal, what's up, brother? Good morning, dude. I know it's early in the morning. Thanks for jumping on, and I'm sure you're excited about, getting into this with us. Kaz Daughtry, brother, what do you got?
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me on again. Once this hit last night, I was already on the phone with you guys saying, looks like the city and many other journalists are finally, maybe admitting to themselves that we've been right all along, and things that we've actually mentioned make sense. When it comes to Mr. Kaz Daughtry, the point here, especially with this article and what they're pointing out, is you need clarification from Mr. Ed Caban, the police commissioner, wherever he may be right now, needs to clarify exactly what is the legal authority that Mr. Kaz Daughtry holds within the New York City Police Department. The problem here is that if you're going to use that old city charter rule, then CCRB, remember, they have an agreement with the CCRB from 2011. You can't have it both ways, where in one instance you're saying you can't prosecute him or you cannot investigate him from CCRB because he's not a cop. But on the other hand, well, he's still a cop and he can arrest people according to the city charter. You can't have it both ways. And this administration has a habit of trying to always have their cake and eat it. And it only points out the mismanagement of the police department and how dysfunctionally it's being run. And it's a microcosm of actually the entire Eric Adams administration. Because wherever you look, whether it be the police department, the fire department, the sanitation department, the DOT, these people that Eric Adams puts as appointed managers are a complete failure. And it's basically a reflection on Eric not being a good manager. And he never was in the police department a good manager because he never was a manager. He was a rabble-rouser who ran around with Al Sharpton and Louis Farrakhan. Now you're seeing it. The city is paying the price for electing Eric Adams, who was never a manager. And this right here is a microcosm of his mismanagement of not only the city, but his own agencies.
You're absolutely right. It's mismanagement. It's poor leadership. But again, I think that it's done by design. I think that Mayor Eric Adams wants useful idiots in their positions to carry out his ideology. And of course, if anything goes south, which it will, because everything in Mayor Eric Adams' circle is sketchy and everything's about money. We hear about who's getting their crumbs. So he needs useful idiots that are not aware of what's going on, and they won't stand up because like, oh, okay, boss, whatever you want. That's where we're at. It's unfortunate. And that's why we have to speak out. We have to speak out. We have to speak out against what's going on in New York City. We need the proper leadership. We need people out there that vote and vote better and think about who's actually in office. We need a good morning, Marlon, by the way. Thank you so much. We need real leadership. Honestly, listen, I prefer someone that has law enforcement experience, especially I prefer homegrown of the New York City Police Department to be the police commissioner. But if we need leadership from an outside source, I'm fine with it. Maybe we can get someone that has a life of military service that actually understands leadership, that would actually be willing to stand up for Mayor Eric Adams. But because the mayor appoints the police commissioner, that wouldn't last very long. And that's why, John, you had posed and you believe that the police commissioner should be an elected position by the people. And I think that's the right avenue to go. And that's what makes the New York City Police Department different than other jurisdictions, because New York City is different when it comes to local government. We have 5 counties that make up a city. So we don't have the sheriff's department at the upper echelons, the New York City Police Department, the local metropolitan, unlike other locations like Los Angeles County, where Los Angeles Police Department, the city is part of the county. There's numerous cities that make up a county, unlike New York City, where it's 5 counties that make up a city. So it's different local government. So the LA County sheriffs, the sheriff department in Los Angeles, the sheriff is elected. So I think that's something that we need to explore. I think you really hit the mark with that, John. I think that going forward, we need to petition that the police commissioner should be an elected official by the people.
So let's delve into this article a little bit. And Sal, let's get your thoughts after that. So next section needs to be clarified. The CCRB has jurisdiction solely over uniformed members of the police department. Daughtry was named assistant commissioner in July 23 and promoted to deputy commissioner in February 24. Both are civilian titles. He is currently listed as inactive in personnel records that are updated by the NYPD, according to CCRB officials. Daughtry wore his gun visibly recently as Thursday at a mayoral press conference, which underscores the dichotomy. The CCRB closed its investigations of Daughtry when he was promoted to the civilian title. He seemingly retained uniform officers' right to open carry a gun. The juxtaposition has sparked questions among current and former NYPD officials about which status should apply while in his current job. I know a lot of people that were deputy commissioners. I don't know one of them that openly carried. John McCarry, a retired NYPD lieutenant who has been critical of the NYPD leadership, said on a recent episode of the podcast. I'm not sitting here saying that Kaz Daughtry is a civilian, and I'm not sitting here saying Kaz Daughtry is a uniformed member of service, he added. I'm saying that it needs to be clarified. Sal, what do you think about that?
Your exact statement there is actually what everyone here has been asking all along. The issue here, and listen, there's been a lot of chatter amongst even retired members. I'm talking about retired for, 30 years already, that they were longtime members. They knew other deputy commissioners and other commissioners that were on the job. And we've had discussions literally about this gentleman and what his legal role, what is his legal authority in NYPD? And basically, it's always in a roundabout. We always end up in the same position where it's always said, well, only the police commissioner can clarify this. Because as you've seen, Mr. Kaz Daughtry is out there with his gun and shield. I think we played a video not even a couple of days ago. We noticed that he has encounters. And I think me and Eric were actually saying, how does he even – now, if I'm one of these people that's videotaping him and he's threatening him with arrest, and now the normal police officer – they could file CCRBs. I mean, they could sue who they want, but the CCRB is for the point of people that abuse their authority. And this guy has a habit of not only abusing his coworkers, he abuses the media, and he abuses people he encounters in the street. And he really, in all honesty, Kaz Daughtry should be terminated, because I don't know if this guy, what his issue is. I don't know how the NYPD and Eric Adams could justify continuing his employment. I don't know how the rumor is that when Eddie Caban steps down by the end of the month, that Kaz Daughtry would be your next police commissioner. Somebody explain how a guy that we don't even know what his legal authority is in the NYPD will now be the guy calling the absolute shots, rubber stamping everything as a police commissioner. Somebody has to explain all this to me, because I don't understand it either.
I'm going to be fair and say this. Based on the video, I have no problem with Kaz Daughtry utilizing a takedown to make an arrest. What I have a problem with is hypocrisy and transparency. The police department talks about transparency, especially under Mayor Eric Adams. Why? We should have constant engagement from the police commission to the public, as we have seen prior from Ray Kelly. And I don't agree with Dermot Shea. He was a total cuck and laid down to the public, but he did have constant engagement with the public. We have to constantly be transparent, but this is the most insignificant police commission that we have. Constant engagement should be, yes, we had an incident with Kaz Daughtry and a reporter. It's been rectified. We're fixing it. Kaz Daughtry is a uniformed member of service, acting as a civilian. Whatever the case is, they should tell the public and stop allowing these questions to be asked, because the public is left in the dark. I have a problem with the hypocrisy that I could not get promoted to captain because of substantiated civilian complaints. And when we have standards, we have comparisons. You could compare my career to Kaz Daughtry. I passed civil service exams. He did not. He was promoted And John, I'm going to agree with you, not 6 ranks, 11 ranks. He is ultimately the police commissioner of the New York City Police Department, which means that his record should be the standard for the police department. His record is actually far more egregious than mine. I was never found guilty of lying in a formal investigation with the police department. He was not only found guilty once, but he was found guilty twice. That's where he should be terminated. According to the disciplinary matrix, misleading statements, lying in official investigation is automatic termination. And yet he was promoted to the deputy commissioner of operations, and I could not get promoted. That is just complete hypocrisy. And at this point, for me, I don't care. I'm okay with retiring as a lieutenant. It's not about the promotion, but I want it to be the catalyst for change because it will happen to someone else. And I am a firm believer, because John and myself and you, Sal, that there is a lieutenant that was promoted to captain who has a record on par of civilian complaints in the manner that I have, that was promoted to captain. And I do believe it's because of this podcast and yourself, Sal, because we are the squeaky wheel that gets the oil. We speak out in response to this. And again, just the police department blatantly doesn't have any standards, doesn't follow policy and rule. It's all about nepotism. Someone had put in here earlier that Michael Kemper's son was promoted to detective with 3 years on the job. It's exactly what I've been saying, because this is about paving the way for siblings, brothers, sisters, kids. It's not about proper promotion and actually doing what's right. It's about nepotism. It's about who's in the circle. And that's why you were wrongfully terminated, Sal. You weren't in the circle. That's why John had to leave. John couldn't get a pass like some of these people that's questionable if they actually got the jab or not. That's why I had to leave, because I no longer do what I was paid and trained to do. Because we're not in the club. We were general population, because we're straight white alpha males.
I gotta go back, because one, I don't understand, Eric, because I am actually a very good Call of Duty player. I wasn't in the private Call of Duty chat, but that's where you went wrong, Eric. Instead of studying for the job, and for you young guys and girls out there that are looking to move the ranks up in the NYPD, obviously studying isn't the path, right? Call of Duty, while you're studying, Kaz is home playing Call of Duty. And then he's just buttoning up to the politicians. And that's the way to go. That's the clear path in the NYPD. That's the way to go. Right? Don't worry. I mean, listen, you're going to be conflicted politically like John Shelley. You might be out at night, be like, wow, how did I vote for Trump? And now I'm sitting here saying that the guy that hates Trump and getting the jail ready for him, Eric Adams, is the best thing since sliced bread. How do I do that? I don't know, but that's what's going to happen. So that's where you guys were wrong. That's where you guys, but let's get into this article, and then Sal, let's get your thoughts. Before we do that, 2 things I want to do. Life After the Job says, still believe Kaz moved to push Sewell away from the job. What do you guys think? Real quick, before we get into all that stuff, what do you guys think real quick? Sal, did Sewell did Kaz push Sewell off the job?
No, I think that was probably a little bit more behind the scenes than just Kaz Daughtry, because I believe she was the one that recommended a penalty for Madry when it came to the CCRB over that whole case that he had. So I think that had a little bit to do with it. And let's be honest, she might have hung out with the aforementioned co-creator or manager of Con Sofrito, Jimmy Rodriguez. But is she a Con Sofrito girl? Because there's another thing you forgot, John. Me, you, Eric, we don't hang out up there. We didn't kiss the ring. So we don't get promoted. We don't get all the amenities and the luxuries that the Hispanic Society and all these other officers that are linked to Eddie Caban and company get, including Kaz Daughtry, who's also been up at Con Sofrito.
Eric, what do you think, brother?
I think that this comment here, Flip Flop McGirt, is pretty much on point. She was a class act. They did her wrong. I don't know what she was thinking. But I do think she was a class act. I think that she was had a great presence. I think she was very professional. But do I know if she was a good commissioner or not? I mean, she gets a lot of credit. I have no idea. She didn't do anything because they didn't allow her to do anything. She was just there in place, just like Ed Caban. The only difference between her and Ed Caban is that she actually made a presence, and she appeared to be professional. She had great speeches. But other than that, what did she do as a police commissioner? I couldn't tell you, because she didn't do the job. I don't know why she left. I mean, if she really had the mental fortitude and also had a moral compass, I believe she would have left far earlier and said, wait a minute, clearly they're not going to allow me to do this job. I figured, okay, after a year or so, well, maybe even less than a year, let's say about 8 months, right? She has to transition from Nassau County to New York City Police Department. But she was still in a position of police commissioner. She was the leadership. And she signed off on your termination, Sal Greco. So I can't say if she was a good commissioner or not. And I've heard people say, well, it's not her fault. She had to do it. No, I don't agree with that at all. If you're put in a position of leadership and that power, I'm not signing off on something I don't agree with. Say, you know what, you want someone to sign off on this, have someone else do it. I don't know what she was thinking. I have no idea. And like I said, I'll give her credit. She made a great presence, but we'll never know if she would be a good commissioner or not. But what we do know is she's never actually going to speak out and say what actually happened, why she left. Because again, she's in line with everybody else. It's about her self-serving career. It's about how she's going to benefit moving forward. Because if her moral compass was far more important, then she would have spoke out about the atrocities that are going on in the upper echelon. All we can do at this point is just assume.
I always said I think Kaz was heavily weighed. If you listen to that women's leadership conference that she spoke out, I highly recommend people listen to it, because she was basically you could like see who she was talking about right away. That article had just came out from Tina Moore, where it said that Kaz was the real PC, a detective running around, and now we see as a deputy commissioner operation, he actually is the real PC as well. But he never needed the rank because he thought he was as a detective. And she says at that conference, she says, you're going to be told what to do by people half your age with a quarter of your experience. I believe she was talking directly about Kaz Daughtry. But was she great? I think she was a nice person from all the accounts I heard from people that I respect. I think she was a nice person. I think that she had some integrity. She had some line. But again, I don't believe she was vaccinated, and I believe she fired thousands of unvaccinated cops and forced them out of their careers like myself. She did listen to this podcast for a time. I don't know if she still does or doesn't. So if you're listening to this, this is why I really am no big, huge fan of you. I don't even know why you got the Mets job, because again, I think that you were asked to do a lot of things that morally you wouldn't be able to put your head on the pillow at night by the Adams administration, by the unindicted co-conspirator. I think they asked you to do things that you said absolutely not, and you ran away and you hid instead of telling the truth and coming out and standing up and holding on to your beliefs. And I don't think that's something that should be rewarded or lauded, is that you ran away and never told anybody. Now leave your career. I left my career too, but I told everybody the minute I did. I left my career, and the next day I was on Fox News. You know what I mean? And I said exactly what I thought about everything and exactly what it was, and she had all those opportunities to do the same thing, and she would actually been on a bigger platform. So I mean, do I hate the lady? No. I think she has way more integrity than the rest of them. I think she would have been a way better police commissioner if given the opportunity than Ed Caban could ever be, than Dermot Shea ever was. I mean, he was, someone said it in here, he was the worst commissioner ever. I'm going to agree with you. I mean, the worst commissioner in my lifetime. He also had his hand puppet, the other de Blasio hand puppet, we could not be afraid. We could not be afraid. Monahan, right?
Oh, God. So, what a cow loser.
Loser. All right, let's finish up this article, and then let's get back into that incident that took place. All right. In response to a Freedom of Information Act requested obtained by the city, the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, which keeps personnel records, stated in April that Daughtry was on leave from his position as a police officer. Now we have a third contradictory statement, right? We have a third. That opens the possibility that in promoting Daughtry, NYPD Commissioner Ed Caban was adhering to an obscure section of the city charter that allows mayor or commissioners to temporarily fill a high-level vacancy with someone who has a competitive civil service position, such as a police officer. In that temporary role, that person would exercise all powers and duties to receive their new salary of their new position, while retaining all the rights and privileges of their status of their prior one, according to the charter. The NYPD press office, cowards, they're watching the show right now. Good morning, peoples. Didn't respond to multiple questions about Daughtry, including whether he's considered a civilian or uniform member and what his duties are. We can't even tell you what the duties are as a deputy commissioner. CCRB officials didn't respond when asked whether they believe the charter provision could in fact allow them to continue the 3 cases against Daughtry if his status is still a police officer. And look, Darsh, look what a coward you are. You won't even respond. If in fact he was a police officer, why wouldn't you do that? I know why. Because he's Eric Adams' little butt boy, and you're afraid to get thrown out of your position. That's why. The Oversight Board reviews instances of police misconduct that includes use of force, abuse of authority, and false official statement, and prosecutes the most serious cases at disciplinary trials overseen by administrative judge. The police commissioner has final say over the disciplinary outcomes. I'm saying right now, abolish the CCRB. They're absolutely useless and toothless. Forget them. They're not a true source of an outside investigation. They can't even not be politically motivated. Sal, what do you think about what I just read?
It's starting to sound like everything is arbitrary. I mean, they're stepping away from the disciplinary matrix. They're stepping away from enforcing these 3 allegations they had on Kaz Daughtry, and apparently those allegations are while he's a deputy commissioner, an assistant commissioner, but he's the civilian rank at that point. So, and it's unprecedented because I've stated numerous times, an assistant commissioner or deputy commissioner, this rule that's in the city charter, there's never been anything written in there. I don't think there's any specifics on the role of what a deputy commissioner would do. I don't think it was written with the idea of, well, we're going to have a deputy commissioner run out there like Joe Cop, like Dillinger, and run around and basically be a cop, like a supervisor, and also put his hands on people, which is what he has done. So I don't think that provision was written at the time with, thinking that there's going to be somebody that's doing what Kaz is doing. So again, the police commissioner is in a hot seat. He can't say no comment because now there's lawsuits. There's many lawyers listening, and they're all saying the exact same thing that we have been either questioning or speculating. And I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to reveal something right here, right now. Back in January, I personally made a complaint to the Department of Investigations about Kaz Daughtry and what his official legal authority is in the New York City Police Department, why he carries a gun, why he's taking enforcement action if he's a civilian. I was on the phone with a lady. She's an investigator. I spoke to her another time right after I made the complaint, and then they disappeared. There's been no response, no answers, no follow-up, nothing. That was back in January. Today is what, August? They've had all this time, and look at all the stuff that's occurred since then with Kaz Daughtry as, I don't know what is he, deputy commissioner, assistant commissioner, but that they've never answered my complaint. And my complaint was months in advance of all these inquiries by the media and anyone else, because I was the original guy that said, what's this guy's legal authority? And again, nobody wants to answer this question. Nobody's bothering to even ask the question, especially the DOI, which is a unit that would investigate the police department. But again, they answer to Mayor Eric Adams. In the end, he is the head of the agency. So it's like, what is it, swept under the rug? What happened with that investigation?
Ron Layson, I believe the allegations were while he was a detective, and they are saying they can no longer investigate because he has been removed as a uniformed member of the service. That's a great point, which is why, even if he's still a detective, a uniformed member of the service, that they pulled him out of the system to protect him. Because if you retire, you resign, you vest out, and you quit, whatever the case is, you leave the job, the Civilian Complaint Review Board will no longer investigate your case. It will be closed out to retirement, closed out, member of the service, vested out, and the Civilian Complaint Review Board will no longer investigate it. I actually experienced, one of my police officers actually had a civilian complaint, and he had left the job. And went to become a police officer in Florida. And unfortunately, he had some family situations, and he had to come back. But that civilian complaint was closed out, and they could not reopen it when he came back. I know that was something that was talked about, but it could not be opened up. It was closed out because he had resigned from the police department, and he came back within the year. But that's a great point Ron Lacey made, which is clearly indicative of why they took him out of the system, to protect him. But again, I believe that they took him out of the system to protect him. I still believe that he's actually a uniformed member of service. I believe he's a detective acting in this billet of Deputy Commissioner of Operations. And if that's the case, that is definitely a form of corruption. And if Jonathan Darsh doesn't step up, he's absolutely a complete coward, because he and his cohorts, his administration, completely went after myself, Eric Dim, as the most complained cop. They were overzealous. Most of my complaints were 4 and 5 years old because they exceed statute of limitations. They utilized the COVID extension to target my record. And yet Kaz Daughtry has been under the blanket of protection of nepotism. Sal, you mentioned the disciplinary matrix. Absolutely. That's the problem with the disciplinary matrix, which is why we've waged the conversation and the debate about the disciplinary matrix. The disciplinary matrix should absolutely be abolished because it protects those in nepotism. And if you're in general population, the arm of the disciplinary matrix could have you terminated. Clearly, Kaz Daughtry should have been terminated not once, but twice for intentionally lying during an official investigation, and he pled to it. So no longer is he credible. I mean, he's in a position where he's got his firearm exposed. He can't even testify in court because of his Jiggly-O material, because he's not credible. And how could the public actually trust the police department when you have ultimately the de facto police commissioner himself, Kaz Daughtry, who's not credible to the public, not credible to the Civilian Complaint Review Board? This is the position that we're in right now. It's a sad state of affairs. Ron Layson, great point. I appreciate it. Absolutely. Let's keep moving forward. And by the way, Yoav, listen, I don't hold it against you. I don't take it personal. The article that you wrote as far as my record being the most complained cop. And I appreciate this article right now because it does expose the hypocrisy. But I do expect some fairness, and I do think that at some point you should write and talk about the hypocrisy in comparison. As the most complained cop, I should have been promoted if Kaz Daughtry should be promoted as well.